how to measure feed efficiency, it's important to understand how to calculate feed efficiency. It's actually a pretty simple math calculation that you can actually do on the back of a napkin. It basically looks at specifically looking at milk production, dividing that by the dry matter intake of the animal, and then you come up with an efficiency factor. So for instance, we would tend to go to most dairies and want to look at energy corrected milk as our milk production parameter. That allows us to standardize feed efficiency across dairies. That's important for nutritionists and veterinarians relative to their client base. So you can take a Jersey herd, for instance, and compare it to a Holstein herd and compare either one of those two to a crossbred herd if we use energy corrected milk as opposed to raw volume. As far as intake, we're going to specifically look at the feed bunk managers, giving us a number where it would be simply the dry matter intake per pen, in this case, most likely is going to be the feed delivered minus the weighbacks. And we'll talk more about how to do that in detail in just a second. That gives us then a calculation of energy corrected milk divided by dry matter intake and our feed efficiency thing. Our feed efficiency calculation. So this takes into account the production and the dry matter intake of the animal. It realizes that efficiency changes by stage of lactation. So in other words, as cows are grouped either by days in milk or by reproductive status, which at some point defaults to days in milk, their dietary energy requirements change, and that feed efficiency number will change with it. And there's also different adjustment factors we can use if we want to get more intricate with the calculation. For instance, most of the ration software that these nutritionists would use on farm, the majority of the dynamic models would calculate adjustment factors to help better refine the calculation relative to the animal's environment. For instance, relative humidity, temperature on a given day, and such. So our goal is to strive for improved efficiency. We like to use this efficiency number as a guide. It's not an absolute, so it's a conversation of accuracy versus precision. On any given dairy, it's probably more important for the management team to be precise as opposed to strive for the actual true number. We want to get numbers that represent over time specific monitoring values for that dairy. We should probably look to do this on a monthly basis at least. Measuring it consistently is very important. So we want to measure this feed efficiency number the same way every time. We'd like to use the same milk production value every time. In other words, that energy corrected milk number would be the preferred number. Ideally, to get a more precise and accurate vision of what's going on in the dairy relative to feed efficiency, we'd like to feed the cows and collect the feed refusals at the same time each day to take out variation relative to time of day. And then in an ideal world, and not always possible, but in an ideal world, we'd like to have the same person determine specifically the refusals. What we find on most of these dairies is that the software in the feeding tools, in other words, the delivery systems that deliver the feed, the TMR wagons or trucks, those are pretty accurate and really aren't impacted by human error at all. It's the refusal part of this calculation where there's opportunity for variation due to different people calculating the actual refusal amount. So as we calculate this number on a dairy and we strive for improved efficiency, what are some things we need to consider? Well, first of all, forage quality. We need to monitor forage quality, realizing that higher quality forages often move through the cow at a faster rate, whereas lower quality forages tend to move through a cow at a slower rate. And this will affect our efficiency factor. In fact, depending on the group of cows and the type of forages you feed, that diet composition can actually influence that efficiency factor, and it can vary year to year based on your forage base. we also want to focus on feed ingredients that have a higher feed efficiency value. So think of it in this way. We want to have, there's two primary buckets of feed efficiency type products or components in a ration. Those ingredients that would increase rumen microbial growth, they allow for additional breakdown of each pound of feed. So if we have components in the diet that would increase microbial growth, we would most likely get better use of our feeds and have a better feed efficiency opportunity. That second bucket of opportunity falls in the line of rumen bypass type supplements. So ingredients that will go right through the rumen to the hind gut. And they're things typically that the cow can't deliver through fermentation. Those have a direct impact on feed efficiency, whereby the rumen doesn't negatively impact the flow of ingredients and helps us with that calculation. So as we calculate feed efficiency, again, we want to use guidelines for a group of cows based on their stage of lactation. I mentioned earlier the difference between accuracy and precision. We want to be precise or repeatable in our calculations, eliminating variation as opposed to striving for these benchmarks to be absolute. But this is just a guideline that's pretty well established in the literature for dairy cattle, regardless of breed. Splitting the group into two sets. The fresh and high cows in the first grouping, we look at a feed efficiency factor of 1.6 or greater. That number is driven a lot by the fact that, for instance, fresh cows, they'll be mobilizing body reserves and eating less dry matter. So that number, again, is not an absolute, but it's more of a target. And our goal is to benchmark where we start with this program and be able to see changes over time to where we can approach this type of a goal. The second grouping that we look at is late lactation cows. The feed efficiency number for them would be as low as 1.3. Those animals, they're not producing as much milk, and they tend to be regaining body weight. So their number is going to be lower than a fresh or a high cow. And again, these are just general guidelines as we move through to try to give you an idea of what the targets should be. So in summary, feed efficiency is a very good tool to help us improve our productivity and profitability. And I guess I'd give you 4 things to take a look at relative to watch outs if you choose to go down this road and measure this data. First of all, be as consistent as possible to eliminate variation. We talked about having the same person, for instance, measure the refusals. I discussed earlier the opportunity to feed the cows at the same time of day or also collect the refusals at the same time of day. Secondly, feed efficiency values are going to vary depending on stage of lactation. Those high producing early lactation animals are going to be more efficient than the late lactation animals will be. Thirdly, feeding high quality forages can directly influence feed efficiency. Again, focusing on feed ingredients of higher feed efficiency value. Those ingredients we discussed that would increase microbial growth to help you get more out of your forage base, and or feed ingredients designed to bypass the rumen and get to the hind gut directly. At the end of the day, this whole conversation about feed efficiency in the dairy industry is really designed around improving the efficiency of the animal, and it's all about producing more milk at less cost.